On a day that began like any other, a chilling mystery unfolded in Lancashire. Tim Birbeck, in a desperate plea, contacted the authorities, his voice laced with concern. His ex-wife, Lindsay, had vanished without a trace. Her phone was dead, her car untouched, and the house showed no signs of forced entry. This was unusual, a departure from her normal behavior. The call to emergency services on August the 12th, 2019, around 4 in the afternoon, marked the beginning of a harrowing investigation into Lindsay Birbeck's disappearance. She had gone for a walk, unaware that it would be her last. Surveillance footage soon surfaced, revealing a young man's unsettling actions. He was seen repeatedly moving a blue wheelie bin across the very cemetery where Lindsay's body was eventually discovered. The haunting question loomed. Who was this enigmatic figure captured on camera, and what connection did he have to Lindsay? The answers were as elusive as they were crucial to solving the grim puzzle. On the 12th of August 2019, for Lindsay Birbeck, a 47-year-old secondary school teaching assistant from Lancashire, England, the day had begun with the promise of ordinary moments. It was during the school holidays, and she had been out shopping with her 16-year-old daughter, Sarah, in Blackburn, gathering supplies for college. Around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Lindsay decided to embark on a leisurely walk. Sarah and her boyfriend Brendan were due for tea at 6 p.m., and she wanted to enjoy a little time to herself before their arrival. She strolled along Burnley Road, then meandered onto Park Avenue, making her way towards a familiar haven known as the Coppice. It was a locale with winding woodland paths nestled in Errington. Lindsay had wandered there countless times, and so she felt perfectly at ease within its embrace. As Zoe Braithwaite savored the warmth of the summer air during a stroll through Coppice, just moments before Lindsay's arrival, her leisurely walk took an unexpected turn. A figure clad in a dark hoodie and sweatpants caught her attention. His hands were buried deep within his pockets as he ambled down the path, not far from her own. The young man was alone, and something about his demeanor seemed off, as if he didn't quite belong. It wasn't just a gut feeling. His actions held an unusual quality that set Zoe on edge. As she tried to slow down, hoping to create some space between herself and the man, he matched her pace, a move that sent a shiver of unease down her spine. A wave of anxiety washed over her as she noticed him quickening his stride, closing the distance between them. Instinctively, she picked up her own pace, her eyes darting around, searching for anything that could serve as a makeshift weapon if needed. Frantically scanning her surroundings for other people, she hurried down towards Basclone. Just then, she glanced back and saw that her sudden burst of speed had startled him. To her surprise, he turned and fled in the opposite direction. Zoe didn't fully grasp how fortunate she had been that day, unaware that the man hadn't actually left the area. Oblivious to the events that had just transpired, Lindsay stepped into the forest grove around 4:30 in the afternoon, mere minutes after it happened. In a strange turn of events, her phone suddenly stopped working, severing all means of communication. For reasons unknown, Lindsay was now unreachable. Little did anyone know that this would be the last time anyone would ever hear from her. At 6 o'clock in the evening, Lindsay's daughter Sarah and her boyfriend arrived at her house, planning to share a cup of tea with her. The couple arrived at the apartment, expecting to be greeted by Lindsay. To their surprise, the door was locked, and their friend was nowhere to be found. Sarah hadn't brought her key, assuming her mother would be home. Now stranded outside, they knocked repeatedly, but their calls were met with silence. A sense of unease began to creep in. They settled on the steps to wait, but as the minutes ticked by, Lindsay remained absent. The situation was becoming increasingly peculiar. Sarah's anxiety for her mother was escalating. She had attempted to reach her multiple times, both through calls and messages, but it seemed her phone was inactive. Increasingly concerned, she resolved to contact her father, Tim Birbeck, requesting his assistance. She recognized the urgency. They needed to discover Lindsay's whereabouts. Sarah conveyed her worry, emphasizing that it was late, and her concern for her mother was significant. Lindsay's car remained parked on the street, a silent sentinel. Her phone appeared dead, casting a long shadow of unease. A shared understanding dawned upon them. Something was amiss. This wasn't like Lindsay to simply vanish without a word. Sarah reached out to Sharon, Lindsay's closest confidant, her fingers crossed for answers. She texted Sharon inquiring about any news from Lindsay, only to receive the disheartening reply that Sharon too was in the dark, her messages unanswered. At almost midnight, precisely 1:45, Sarah and her father Tim made the decision to return to Lindsay's home, clutching the spare key. They meticulously searched every nook and cranny of the house, only to find it empty. Everything appeared normal, eerily so. No signs of a struggle, no indication of anything out of the ordinary. This only deepened their worry, a knot tightening in their stomachs. Realizing the urgency of the situation, at 11 minutes past midnight, Tim dialed the police and reported his ex-wife missing. Detective Sharon Lanka, her voice calm and professional, answered the call. Lanka speaking, "How can I assist you?" A man's voice, laced with anxiety, responded, "It's about my ex-wife. She's just vanished." "Vanished how?" Lanka pressed, already reaching for a notepad. "I tried calling her, but her phone's dead. Her car's still in the driveway. And I checked the house. No sign of forced entry. Nobody's been there. This isn't like her." Lanka paused. "Has she ever done anything like this before? Disappeared without a word?" "Absolutely not," he replied, his voice tight with worry. "Never." After Lindsay vanished, Tim poured every ounce of his being into the search. Meanwhile, law enforcement explored various possibilities, desperate to understand what fate had befallen her. Several scenarios emerged, each painting a different picture of Lindsay's disappearance. We knew she was an avid runner, athletic and disciplined. One grim theory suggested an accident might have befallen her during one of her runs. She could be lying injured somewhere, or worse, she might have harmed herself. Her family, however, firmly believed she would never consider taking her own life. They were convinced she had simply disappeared, and finding her quickly was paramount. Therefore, less than a day after she was last seen, the Lancaster County Police issued a press release informing the public of Lindsay's disappearance and appealing for help in finding her safe and sound. Reporters treated the appeal like any other missing person case, posting it on websites and mentioning it in newspapers. That day began like any other, offering no hint that this missing person case would be anything but ordinary. On the morning of August 13th, 2019, the day after Lindsay vanished, the police launched an extensive search across the county. They left no stone unturned, enlisting specialized units, including mounted police and mountain rescue teams. But the authorities weren't alone in their efforts. Sarah, Tim, and the residents of Arrington rallied together, united in their determination to find Lindsay. They gathered, their efforts synchronized in the desperate search. Despite the immense undertaking involving hundreds, the initial hunt for Lindsay yielded nothing. But after 4 grueling days, the police finally caught a break. Sifting through hours of CCTV footage, they spotted Lindsay at around 4 p.m. on the day she vanished. She was wearing her distinctive purple jacket, walking along Burnley Road before turning onto Peel Park Avenue and heading toward the entrance of the Grove. The landscape was a tapestry of rolling hills, winding trails, and dense foliage. Authorities released security camera footage, urging anyone who had seen Lindsay in or around the Grove to come forward. Days turned into a blur, and the family's hope began to dwindle. By the 19th of August, Lindsay had been missing for a week, and each passing minute chipped away at their already fragile hopes. Police held grave concerns for Lindsay's safety, uncertain if they would find her alive. On the 24th of August, 2019, an unusual discovery unfolded. Morgan Parkinson, a local resident, was taking his dog for a walk through Arrington Cemetery when his canine companion suddenly darted off toward a secluded, overgrown area. Morgan called after his dog, but the animal, as if sensing a hidden treasure, ignored him. Undeterred by Morgan's calls, the dog intently sniffed something on the ground. The unsettling behavior piqued Morgan's curiosity. As he drew nearer, his foot encountered something soft and yielding beneath the overgrown grass, sending a jolt of alarm through him. He recoiled instinctively, tugging his dog back by its collar. A wave of putrid stench assaulted his nostrils, thick with the drone of flies. To Morgan's horror, a shallow grave concealed a gruesome discovery. Human remains, wrapped in a clear plastic sheet. The search for Lindsay had reached a tragic end with the discovery of her lifeless body. The Birbeck family had endured an agonizing ordeal, clinging to hope for Lindsay's safe return, only to be confronted with the crushing finality of her loss. Lindsay's body was discovered meticulously concealed in a shallow grave, covered with stones. The discovery transformed the search into a full-fledged murder investigation. Swiftly, the police secured the scene to gather evidence, and Lindsay's body was sent for an autopsy, where medical examiners conducted a thorough examination. During the autopsy, pathologist Naomi Carter made a chilling discovery. She stumbled upon unsettling clues, hinting at a disturbing attempt to sever Lindsay's right leg. A deep gash reaching the bone, and possibly intended to widen it, marked the limb, along with telltale saw marks. Furthermore, Dr. Carter observed extensive damage to Lindsay's entire larynx, a type of injury more akin to a severe industrial accident. In her 25 years of practice, Dr. Carter had never encountered such an unusual trauma. With Lindsay lying undiscovered for 12 days, decomposition had begun, complicating the already difficult task of uncovering evidence of the assault. Lindsay's intact fingernails offered a glimmer of hope to investigators, suggesting the possible presence of the murderer's DNA. Further examination revealed that a considerable amount of force had been used to fracture Lindsay's neck, with devastating trauma concentrated around the throat. This kind of injury could result from a kick, forceful pressure, or the placement of a heavy object on the neck, all consistent with a violent assault. While broken bones are not always fatal, they can lead to other severe complications, especially when critical areas like the spinal cord or major blood vessels are affected. Law enforcement was relentless in their pursuit of Lindsay's killer. A wave of fear gripped the local community as residents worried that the murderer might strike again. On the following day, August 25th, a team of forensic experts arrived at the cemetery to investigate. There, they made a significant discovery. Near a grave, they found a saw with a yellow handle. The lab results were conclusive. It was Lindsay's bloodstains on the axe. This grim finding strongly suggested that the tool had been used in a gruesome attempt to dismember her body. In addition to the axe, investigators discovered a pair of gloves at the scene. While Lindsay's DNA was present on the outside of the gloves, the inside revealed a different story. They found DNA belonging to an unidentified individual, someone not yet in the system. Further investigation of the crime scene revealed another piece of evidence. Inside a blue plastic bag, they discovered a pair of athletic sneakers, identical to the ones Lindsay had been wearing. The detail that truly baffled the police was the state of the victim's footwear. The soles of her boots had been meticulously cut away and discarded in a nearby cemetery dumpster. Why would anyone do such a thing? And more importantly, how did Lindsay's body end up in that desolate graveyard in the first place? Adding another layer to the mystery, investigators discovered traces of grass and leaves clinging to both her body and the plastic sheeting she was wrapped in. To unravel the mystery, the police enlisted the help of a botanist to examine the foliage discovered at the scene. Careful analysis revealed that the vegetation wasn't native to the cemetery grounds. This suggested that Lindsay had been murdered elsewhere and subsequently transported to the graveyard. While the precise location of the murder remained elusive, investigators theorized that it most likely occurred in a grove shortly after she left her home. Adding to the puzzle, examination of a blue trash bin emerged as a significant link in the case. Upon closer examination, they unearthed Lindsay's DNA alongside a scattering of her hairs. This discovery fueled a chilling suspicion. Could her body have been transported to the graveyard within that very container? Instantly, in this murder investigation, where anyone could be the suspect, Tim became the primary focus. He held the position of being closest to Lindsay, and in such cases, investigators often begin by scrutinizing those nearest to the victim. Given their recent divorce, some speculated that Tim might have possessed a motive to harm his former wife. The police investigation took a turn when Tim's alibi surfaced. He was initially considered a person of interest in Lindsay's disappearance. However, detectives interviewed Tim's employer and confirmed he was at work all day. Therefore, he was cleared as a suspect. With Tim no longer a suspect, investigators needed to identify other potential individuals who might have wanted to harm Lindsay. With no clear suspects in sight, they faced a daunting task, finding themselves back at square one. They resolved to re-examine every piece of evidence collected, meticulously analyzing each detail in the hope of uncovering fresh leads or connections that might guide them to the killer. As the investigation progressed, one of the detectives, while reviewing CCTV footage, made a significant discovery. After spotting Lindsay on camera during her afternoon walk at 6 minutes past 4 p.m., they noticed another individual, a young man, captured on video around 30 minutes past 6 p.m. exiting the coppice onto Burnley Road. His jacket was unzipped, revealing a bare chest. The man's Moccolini tracksuit bottoms were wet, hinting that he may have been involved in something more strenuous than just walking or running. He was spotted on camera again, leaving the grove once more, and over the next hour and a half, he repeatedly crossed paths with the camera filming the area. At almost 7 o'clock that evening, the same young man was seen carrying a backpack. Later, around 8:30, he was observed hauling a blue-wheeled garbage bin in the direction of Arrington Cemetery, where tragically Lindsay's body was eventually discovered. What made this even more unsettling was that all of this transpired in broad daylight, yet seemingly went unnoticed. Although the police couldn't definitively identify the individual from the CCTV footage, they were convinced he was somehow connected to Lindsay's murder and potentially held crucial information. Consequently, they released the CCTV footage to the public, urging anyone with information about the young man to come forward, hoping it would lead them to Lindsay Birbeck's killer. Not long after the surveillance footage surfaced, a married couple wasted no time in contacting the police. Driven by a gut feeling, they brought their 16-year-old son, Rocky Marciano Prides, to the local precinct. While hesitant to believe Rocky could be involved in the tragic murder of Lindsay, they couldn't shake the conviction that it was him captured on the security cameras. Rocky, named after the legendary boxer, had spent his entire life in the Vinnie Hall area of Erdington, growing up alongside his parents and a few siblings. For nearly 3 decades, they had called that neighborhood home, weaving a tapestry of cherished memories within its familiar streets. Rocky was an active member of the family farm, taking particular joy in tending to the chickens. Come evening, he enjoyed watching movies and playing video games, just like any other boy his age. His life appeared ordinary, filled with the typical joys and responsibilities of a teenager. While Rocky seemed like a normal kid to his family, not everyone saw him in the same light. He harbored a few hidden stories and struggles, which he kept to himself, facing them alone. Rocky's journey was significantly shaped by his cognitive profile, marked by an IQ of 65. This, coupled with diagnoses of autism and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, painted a unique canvas for his life. Back in 2015, a psychological evaluation revealed a limited understanding of his own emotions and the emotional states of others. The psychologist also noted a struggle in grasping the connection between events and the emotions they triggered. A subsequent report in 2016 further highlighted his challenges, depicting him as someone who struggled with navigating unfamiliar environments and required supervision when out in public. These assessments paint a picture of Rocky struggling to comprehend and navigate his emotions and surroundings. Lancashire police affirmed that Rocky had no prior criminal record, reprimands, cautions, or warnings. Nevertheless, despite this clean slate, he became a suspect in the murder of Lindsay. His actions and movements following the woman's death perplexed investigators. Despite committing such a heinous act, he displayed no signs of anxiety or panic. He calmly stepped away from Rush, his mind already racing, meticulously planning how to move her body to the cemetery. What struck investigators most was his chilling lack of fear of getting caught. As the investigation unfolded, a crucial piece of evidence emerged. Rocky's DNA perfectly matched the DNA found on the gloves the killer used to dispose of Lindsay's body. This discovery irrevocably linked Rocky to the crime. Adding to the shock, it was revealed that Rocky had no connection to Lindsay, despite living only a 3-minute drive away. Their paths had never crossed. They were complete strangers to each other. One could then ask what drove Rocky to commit such a heartless act against someone he had no reason to harm. Rocky's parents remained steadfast in their belief of their son's innocence. Despite their pleas, the mounting evidence against Rocky left the police with no choice but to arrest him. For days they interrogated him, but Rocky remained silent, refusing to respond to any questions or comments. He offered no explanations, no denials, nothing but a wall of silence. Driven by a single question, what could possibly compel a young man to commit such a heinous crime? Was it mere curiosity spiraling out of control, a trigger buried deep within his past, or the echo of a traumatic experience? After 2 long days of relentless questioning, Rocky finally offered an explanation for his actions on the 12th of August, 2019. His claim, innocence in the murder of Lindsay. A twist of fate led Rocky to an unsettling proposition. As he recounted, a stranger, a Caucasian man speaking fluent English, approached him with an offer too tempting to ignore, a substantial sum of money in exchange for moving a body. Rocky maintained that he had never seen this individual before, nor had they exchanged a single word prior to this encounter. He told the police that the mysterious man promised to leave the payment for him at the graveyard where the body was discovered. However, upon completing the grim task of transporting the body, Rocky found no money awaiting him. The shadowy figure was cloaked in a hood that obscured his face, leaving Rocky unable to recall any distinguishing features, such as his height or build. Whether Rocky was telling the truth or concocting a story to mislead the investigation remained unclear. Regardless, the police pursued the search for the enigmatic white man who, according to Rocky, had solicited him for the task. He was aware of the impending outcome as we shared the same space. The animosity we felt towards him was palpable, and such treatment only exacerbated his situation. He carried himself with an air of utter disdain, as if no one in the room was worthy of his respect. His posture was slumped, and his face was an emotionless mask. The trial of Rocky Price commenced in January of 2020. He admitted to transporting Lindsay's body from Krylov, but pleaded not guilty to the charge of murder. Nevertheless, the prosecution presented compelling evidence linking him to Lindsay's death, including crucial DNA evidence. In August of 2021, the second trial commenced, stretching over 8 days. The initial proceeding had been nullified due to a fabricated video implicating another individual in Lindsay's murder. This time, the jury deliberated for a mere 4 hours before reaching a decision. According to the judges, including Amanda, Rocky's mental state was deemed irrelevant to his actions, and no amount of reasoning could sway the verdict of his guilt. Rocky received a life sentence with a recommendation that he serve a minimum of 16 years, as the crime was deemed premeditated. Due to his age, the minimum sentence would have been 12 years. However, because the crime was intentional, it was aggravated. Thus, considering his age, the premeditated nature of the crime, and the aggravating circumstances, he received a minimum sentence of 16 years, extending to life imprisonment. There is a chance Rocky may never leave prison, a thought that brought a measure of grim solace. After serving 16 years, Rocky could be released if the parole board decides he no longer poses a threat to society. Upon release, he would face a lifetime of probation, mirroring the U.S. system of parole. This meant forfeiting true freedom and living under constant societal scrutiny. Many find this a harsher fate than imprisonment, a perpetual state of not being truly free despite not being behind bars. As for the events of that fateful day, theories abound. My belief is that Price was there seeking a sexual encounter with the woman. He was driven by a primal urge, a craving for physical connection. Thus, when he set his sights on the lone woman, a surge of power coursed through him. An unsettling sixth sense prickled her skin, whispering that this encounter held danger. Instinctively, she bolted down the alleyway, her eyes darting around, searching for anything, a stick, a branch, to wield as a shield. Her quick thinking and readiness to defend herself proved enough to deter the would-be aggressor. He should have considered it a rehearsal. He needed to adjust his approach when encountering the next woman walking alone. Unfortunately, the next solitary woman he met in such a state was Lindsay Birbeck, and so she met her tragic end. Despite Rookie's conviction for Lindsay's murder, his family steadfastly refused to believe he could have committed such a crime. Driven by an unwavering belief in his innocence, they fervently argued that Rookie's autism should not equate to a murder conviction. In a desperate plea to save their son, they implored for his life to be spared, emphasizing that autism in itself does not predispose an individual to such violence. His mother adamantly asserts that there is no concrete evidence linking Rookie to the death of Lindsay. While it is true that some individuals on the autism spectrum may occasionally exhibit aggressive behaviors, it is vitally important to understand that autism presents in vastly diverse ways, and no two people are the same. Autism is a neurodevelopmental condition that affects how a person communicates and interacts with the world around them. Individuals on the autism spectrum sometimes face challenges in interpreting social cues or expressing themselves verbally. In one particular case, the defendant's autism diagnosis was brought up as a potential factor influencing his actions and choices during the trial. This case brings forward some important questions to reflect on. What could have motivated the accused to commit the crime? Did autism play a part in the crime? Was there a different motive behind the killing? How can society better support individuals with autism and intellectual disabilities to prevent similar incidents from occurring in the future? Why